You know, when I ran for the lieutenant governor in 2013, I did not know Jonathan very well. He was in the House, I was in the Senate, and I was a senator. And when I announced I was running, Jonathan, do you remember this? The first person that endorsed me from the Texas House, and the House members don't usually get involved in those races. There were 4 of us running because you take a chance if we endorse Dan and Dan doesn't win, because there was the lieutenant governor then, David Dewhurst, Todd Staples, the Ag Commissioner, and Jerry Patterson, the Land Commissioner. If Dan doesn't win, then maybe whoever does win, their bills will die because they supported me. And he gathered I guess we had about 12 people at dinner that night. And so I thank you, Jonathan. But he literally walked by my desk. He said, like very much lower key. He kind of walked by my desk on the floor and he walked by and said, I'm going to endorse you. Thank you. And he kept walking. I've never seen you so calm. Never seen you so calm. And we were proud that you passed killing red light cameras. That was one of your last acts as a member, so thank you for doing that. You and Bob Hall. So everything Jonathan said to you is absolutely on target. It's the reason I'm on this bus tour. Hopefully when you leave tonight, because you'll get out of here before I will, take a picture of the bus. In fact, we're doing a little contest. Somebody's going to win a prize. You just take a picture of the bus and tag us on your feed when you put it out on social media. Bus tour or Dan's bus tour, however you tag it. And we'd like for you to see the bus. I'm spending a lot of time in it. We're doing 130 cities in 8 weeks. We started yesterday in Marshall, and from memory, we've in the last less than 48 hours, about 36 hours, we've been to Marshall, Linden, Gilmer, Texarkana, Sherman. Of course, we're here in Decatur. Where were we before that team? Help me. I don't know. I forget. But we've been to about 12 or 14 cities since we started yesterday morning. And with one message, Jonathan's message. We have to come together to defeat the Democrats and keep Texas red. If we lose Texas, and I don't plan on losing it, but I'm not taking it for granted. I'm not waltzing through this election. And that's why I'm on this tour. And why am I coming to rural Texas? Why am I here tonight? Because I want you to recognize, my 3 words are recognize, galvanize, and mobilize. But I want you to recognize how important you are, because I already recognize how important you are. I wouldn't have won my last election without rural Texas. We won by 450,000 votes out of 8 million. That's not a big margin. That's not a big margin. And so rural Texas, you know, when you watch Fox News and you see Bill Hemmer with his map up there, what do you see when you see Ohio? All red except Cleveland and Cincinnati. Pennsylvania, all red except Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. North Carolina, all red except Raleigh and Charlotte. Georgia, all red except Atlanta and Savannah. And Texas is pretty much all red except Dallas and Houston and San Antonio and Austin. You know, they also have El Paso, and they've got Cameron County and a few others on the border. But it's really those 4 cities. Those 4 cities represent about 1 out of every 2 votes. So 4 counties, about 1 out of every 2 votes. We need the other 240 counties to deliver so we win. I'll tell you a quick story. So I was chair of Donald Trump's campaign in 16 and 20. I was with Ted Cruz because I didn't know Donald Trump. I was honored to be his chair. But I was with Ted Cruz. I didn't know Donald Trump, and we were with Ted. But when Ted didn't have the delegates at the end and it was official, I reached out to the Trump campaign and said, you know, I want to help. And so they said, well, Donald's going to be in San Antonio. This was in June, right after the delegates, all the primaries were over. And they said, go down to a meeting, plus we want you to be our advisor on the border. They had a really small team. I mean, like 12 people. There were more people, you know, running for county commissioner in a small county than they had running for president. And so I go down there, because I was supposed to introduce him. I wanted to shake his hand, look him in the eye before I introduced him. And he said, so Dan, why are you helping me? I said, because we have to defeat Hillary Clinton. Well, I've seen you on Fox. You were really big for Ted Cruz. I said, yeah, I'm a loyal guy. I was with Ted. Now I'm with you. You won. It's real simple. We come together and beat the Democrats. And so we built this relationship. We've probably done 30 events together in Texas, been in the limousine a lot. He was always very generous. He always wanted to know what was going on. He'd say, come on, get in the car. Come on, get in the car and tell me what's going on if we met him on the runway. And we've done events in Mar-a-Lago, and so we've become close. And I'll tell you, in 2020, he would call me about a month out. Dallas Morning News ran a headline that said, Texas turning blue, Biden 50, Trump 50. And of course, I knew that wasn't right. Just like there was a poll last week in the Dallas Morning News about our race. It wasn't right because our methodology is wrong. In this case, the poll last week had us up more than we are, because it's about a 5 or 6 point race, not an 11-point race, the Dallas Morning News said. You say, well, how would that be, Dan? Because they sampled more Republicans. They said we're going to get 58% of the Hispanic vote. I hope we do, but right now, 45 to 50% would be great. And so he calls and says, Dan, do I need to come to Texas? I said, no, Mr. President, you do not need to come to Texas. You sure? I said, you're going to win by 6 or 7 points, just like you did in 16. He said, yeah, but there's another 2 million voters. I said, you'll be fine, because they went from 8.5 million in 16 to 11 million in 20. And so every week he would call. Dan, do I need to come? I said, Mr. President, you're fine. If you come to Texas, that will send a really scary message to everyone. So don't do that. So on the Saturday before the election, I'm watching him on Fox on Saturday afternoon. He's in Pennsylvania. I think he was at Gettysburg doing a speech. I see him get into the limousine and wave to everyone. And 2 minutes later, my phone rings, White House. Who's calling me from the White House? And I pick up the phone. The president would like to speak with you. Dan, do I need to come to Texas Monday? I said, Mr. President, you do not have to come to Texas. Well, we're going to win this election, but we can't lose Texas. You're not going to lose Texas. So what happened on election night? This is all a true story. So on election night, at 8:30, he's 500,000 votes behind in Texas. Why? Because at 7 o'clock, as you know, the first votes that come in are the mail-in ballots and the early vote. Mostly the early vote. That's most of the vote that comes in. And where do they come in first? From the biggest counties, because they turn in these big precinct boxes, lots of votes pouring in, and they have a short way to go to turn them into the counting center. So he's down 500,000 votes. Phone rings. It's the campaign. President wants to know why he's down 500,000 votes. You said he didn't need to come to Texas. He's not happy. I said, tell him not to worry, rural Texas will come through. I hung up the phone. Now, Jan and I have been married 47 years. She knows when I say something in a certain tone, I really mean it. I said, Jan, if I'm not right, you and I have to pack and leave the country tomorrow. That's true. True. I could just see him up there if he had lost because of Texas. If he stood up there and said, I would be president if it weren't for Dan Patrick, who told me not to come to Texas. So what happened? By 11:30 midnight, he was 700,000 votes ahead. So when rural Texas delivered, you gave him a 1.2 million vote victory, minus the 500,000. And you did the same thing for Greg Abbott and myself and Ken Paxton in 2018. But this battle was bigger than any other battle we've had. And it's in one way because Beto O'Rourke has 60, 70, 80, 90, $100 million. I know, boo. So we have to beat Beto. Can you imagine? I can't even, it's the twilight zone if I woke up the next morning and he were governor. We're not going to let that happen. But we've also got to not only make sure Abbott wins, but we got to have big margins, because after him comes me, and then comes the Attorney General, and then comes the Land Commissioner, and the Ag Commissioner, and the Comptroller, and the Supreme Court Justices. So we need everyone to go all the way down the ballot, all the way down to your local races and vote Republican. This is not a battle, and Jonathan was alluding to this, this is not a battle about R's and D's anymore. This is about darkness and light in this country. It's about powers and principalities. It's about evil. It's about evil. The things, there was a time when we moved from a president, from George Herbert Walker Bush to Bill Clinton, back to George Bush, there wasn't this big yank to the right or to the left. There was really more similarities between the parties then. And now, we've got the crazies on the left running the show up there. Pull in Joe Biden's strings, or President Brandon's string, excuse me. I'm President Biden's string, excuse me on that. I was thinking of a priest last week. I gave a speech last Friday night in Austin, and a priest was up before me, and he said, I just want you to know that we all have to come together and beat President Brandon. And everybody laughed. So I was next, I got up there, I said, Father. Now, my wife and I have a mixed marriage. I'm Baptist, she's Catholic. Our kids are raised Catholic. They both graduated from Baylor with a degree in evangelical bingo calling, so they're set. But I got up there, I said, Father, I took a picture with you earlier for my wife. She'll be so proud because she's Catholic. I said, but you just said President Brandon, I didn't even know you knew that word. Everybody laughed. I said, so let me play priest, you play me. Son, I forgive you. Please say 3 Hail Marys. But this is where we are. It's a battle of darkness and light. Matthew 4:16 says they were in the dark and they saw the light. And I believe that America saw the light and came out of the dark when Glenn Youngkin became governor of Virginia in a race that anyone would have said he couldn't win. He was about 12 points behind with 2 or 3 weeks to go. And when Terry McAuliffe said that parents don't have a right to have a say in their child's education, people said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. And so that's when America started waking up. We are in a battle of darkness and light. It's darkness when you say that your child can come home and say, Mommy, Daddy, my teacher told me I can be a little boy even though I'm a little girl. Or I'm a boy and I can be a girl. That's darkness. That's darkness. And that's the policies they support. It's darkness when you say boys can play girls' sports. I'm sorry. I have a daughter and a son. I've got 2 granddaughters. I don't want some boy running over my granddaughter on the soccer field. And I don't want some boy who can hit the ball further from the tee, winning the scholarship from college on the high school golf team because they can hit the ball further. I mean, just go down the list. It's just craziness. It's chaos. But remember what chaos is. Chaos is what the Marxist leftists create, and it's what the devil created. The devil came for chaos. Jesus came to give us peace. And we have chaos everywhere now in our country because of the Democrats. And they aren't the Democrats anymore. They're just the woke left, Bernie Sanders, AOC, Marxists. And make no mistake, they've been on, why do they hate Donald Trump so much? They hate Donald Trump so much because they've been on this move for decades. You know, if you look at their playbook, they take over a country gradually. The first thing they do, and we have a lot of great schools and my wife's a school teacher, my daughter-in-law, we have great teachers, great schools. But not all of our 365,000 teachers, not all of our 9,000 campuses, not all of our 1,200 districts. And so where they can infiltrate, they do all over the country. And they have infiltrated our education system, first K to 12, and now higher ed. You think it's any mistake that college students are graduating today not liking America? It's because they infiltrated our education system over decades. What did they do next? They infiltrated the media. Except for Fox News, it's a joke. It's like Pravda's propaganda for Putin in Russia. MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, they're just a parrot for the talking points of the Democrats. Thank God we have Fox News. Not that I agree with them 100% of the time, but you know, 80, 90% of the time, they're right on target. And so they had those 2 legs of the stool. What was the one they needed last to control the country? They needed the Supreme Court. And that's why they hate Donald Trump. When they saw him come down the escalator, they didn't think there was any way Hillary Clinton would lose to him. They didn't even think he'd be the nominee. And then when he became the nominee, they were happy. They were sure he was going to lose. And imagine had Hillary won the Supreme Court today. It would be a 6-2, 6-3, or 7-2 liberal court. It wouldn't make any difference what laws we passed in Texas. They would be overturned, the critical laws, Second Amendment, pro-life, religious liberty, go down the list, they would be overturned by the Supreme Court. And we would lose our country. And so that's why they hate him so. They'd worked for 40 years, and this guy came up, down the escalator, and snatched it away from him. And that's why, by the way, why they don't like her anymore either, because they're mad at her because she lost. So they don't want anything to do with her either. So where are we? We are in a position where the whole world is looking at America and seeing us weak. And they want to see how this election is going to turn out in Congress and the Senate and state by state. You look at the chaos, as I talked about, the chaos on the border, chaos in our military. Chaos in business. Disney World says, I'm sorry, we're not saying ladies and gentlemen anymore. We're not saying boys and girls. I'm sorry, I'm not taking my grandkids to Disney and giving you any more of my money. If you can't call them a boy and a girl and call me ladies and gentlemen, then I don't want to waste my money with you. And chaos in the markets. Look at your 401k. Chaos in the economy. Chaos in everything they do. Chaos. And when you look at the polling You ask yourself, how did this happen? In 1990, this was just out last week, 1990, 90% of Americans consider themselves Christians. Now look, there are a lot of people who call themselves Christians, may not be Christians, or don't go to church every week and are Christians, but 90% said, we're Christians. We believe in God. In 2007, it's down to 78%. And in 2022, it's now down to 64%. That's of all Americans call themselves Christians. You shouldn't be surprised because I spoke at the state convention in June, and that day Gallup came out with a poll, and the poll said this: 62% of liberals do not think there's a God. We're not talking about believing in God or not believing. They don't think there's a God. They somehow think a creation came without a creator. 62% of liberals don't think there's a God. Shows you how dumb they are because even the devil believes in God. 72% of Democrats do not believe there is a God. And this is really frightening. 68% of college students do not think there's a God. So if you don't think this march to push God out of our country is real, it is real. And they've been on this march a long time. And they're changing the next generation. 2 Chronicles 7:14 says, for those who are called by my name, if they will humble themselves and turn their face to me and pray and ask forgiveness for their wicked ways and ask me to heal their land, I will hear them from heaven, and I will forgive their sins, and I will heal their land. Now, I'm a late bloomer as a Christian. It took me a while to get there, but I finally got there. So I believe in the Word of God. I believe every word is true. And when God says he will hear us and heal our land, I believe it. But I always had the wrong people. I'm thinking, if my people who are called by my name, I was thinking he was talking about America. Well, no, it's not America. It's those of us who are Christians. When's the last time you prayed that prayer? When's the last time? So we as a Christian nation have to stand up for our country and our faith, or we will not have a country. And as Reagan said, freedom and liberty are one generation away from extinction. We don't pass it on through the bloodstream. We hand it down to our children. We teach it to our children. We teach them to teach it to their children. We fight for it and we protect it. Or if we do not, Reagan said, in the sunset of our lives, we will tell our children's children of an America where men and women were once free. Make no mistake, what's on the line here in Texas will chart the future of the country and the world. Because if the Democrats get a foothold here and they win, they're in a strong position for 2024. And once that happens, then we never win the White House again as Republicans or any other party. Because when you have the electoral votes of California and New York and Texas, there is no mathematical formula that you can win the electoral votes to become president. So they wouldn't care what you thought. They wouldn't care what the red states did. They'd overturn every bill. They'd control Congress. They'd have the White House again for decades. So that's what's at stake. You know, we in Texas, and you in rural Texas, I want you to recognize, that was my word, recognize the role that God has given you in your life. This isn't the Alamo, this isn't San Jacinto, but it's the same. They fought for freedom and liberty, and we're in that same fight. We're not on the wall with muskets, we're not charging Santa Ana over the grassy hill, but we have the vote to fight back. And so when I look at the rural vote, we need a big turnout. We know we're going to win those 240 counties, but 65-35 is a landslide normally. That's not enough to get it done. We need a 70-30, 75-25, 80-20 victory. We need to swamp the ballot box. And Jonathan said, you know, do everything you can do. Here's one thing you can do. How many of you like robocalls? I never have had a hand go up. Okay, so I know you're all paying attention. That's good. I don't like them either. Now, how do you avoid a robocall? Vote on Monday, the first day of early voting. Because we look at the list every day, and we go through the list. We look at 4 R's, 3 R's, 2 R's, 1 R's. What is that? A 4R is someone, most of you I bet, have voted in 4 straight Republican primaries, or 3 out of 4, 2 out of 4, 1 out of 4. So if you're a 4R, we expect you to turn out. And by the time we get to Wednesday, if we see our numbers are down, that we don't have the 4Rs showing up, you're going to get a call. And the 3Rs are going to get a call. And the Democrats do it the same way, 4 Ds, 3 Ds, 2 Ds, 1 D. So we're going to call you until you vote. That's what we do. I'm not going to, if you vote, I'm not going to call you. I don't have the money to call everybody every day. I want you to be that annoying, pesty robocall to your friends and neighbors. I want you to make a list, because people say, "Dan, I got your vote." I said, I want to empower you by 10 or 20 or 30, however many friends and family members you have. Make a list, and you send them a note and say, look, I want you to vote for Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, and Paxton. Go down the list on Buckingham, Sid Miller, and go down the list. Glenn Hager, our Supreme Court Justice. I want you to do that. And our local county officials, and for our state reps, and for our senators, and for our congressmen. I want you to do that. And I'm going to check in with you to be sure you do. Because a lot of people have great intentions. I mean, this is a growing county. This is a great crowd. But all those other people out there are going around, they're busy. They're raising their kids, their grandkids, they're working 2 jobs, they're tired, they have stress in their life, whatever it is. They're not thinking about what we're talking about. But they're good Republicans, and they plan to vote, but they always don't get there. So on like Wednesday of early vote, send all those people back a note. Have you voted yet? Have you voted yet? I didn't hear back from you. Let me know when you vote. And do that about every 2 days, all the way through early voting. And then if your list has still got 4 or 5 names on it, say, hey, you told me you're going to vote. You haven't voted yet. Election day, I'm going to count on you. That's literally what you can do to make the biggest difference. You can turn Wise County into a county that outperforms every other county because you've done that. And it's just a little bit of time. And you'll have a little bit of fun with your friends. And by the way, if you have any Democrats in your family, and every family has one, maybe not in Wise County, don't put them on your list and remind them to vote, okay? I want to be very clear about this. I mean, I don't have a big family, but I think maybe there's someone who hugs me and likes me a lot, but I'm not sure how they vote. I'm not sure, I'm just kidding. So I want to close with this. I'll take a couple of questions. I want to close with this. Thank you for coming tonight. At the end of a day, we had a 14-hour day yesterday, a 14-hour day today by the time we finish. But I get energized by you. I've done so many events with Trump, and I'd watch him after a long day. We spent some days together where, and he's not doing a 20-minute speech like I am. He's doing an hour-and-a-half rally, and he'd do 2 or 3 of them. And I'd see him behind the curtain, and he'd be tired, as we all would. We'd start at 6, 7 in the morning. He'd do a breakfast. He'd go somewhere and do this, and we'd be flying around the state of Texas. And he'd get to the 8 o'clock event. People had been waiting there since 5 o'clock. He loved people. He hated that you had to wait so long, but everybody got there early. And he'd go out there, and he was unbelievable. I've never seen anyone with so much energy. Never seen anyone with so much energy. And I understand it because I feed off of it too. When I get on the bus, I'll be a little tired, but right now I could go for another 5 hours, but you all have things to do. So we need you. We need rural Texas to turn out. And Jonathan, I thank you, Liberty PAC, for coming on board. We have a few Mitt Romneys and Liz Cheneys in our own state who are coming out against Republicans, coming out against me, coming out against others. These are just bitter Democrats that have been wearing the masquerade of being a Republican for a long time. And that's all it's about. But we need you, and I'd be honored to have your vote and your support. Let me take a couple of questions. Yes, sir.
I'm an American veteran, so this position I'm asking about, it took me a while to get to it. It was actually tough. But the way I feel is the swamp in D.C. does not represent any of us.
Nope.
But you do, and Austin does. And if I have a problem, I know I can.
Yes, sir.
My representative down in Austin. I just want to know, is the legislature, are y'all going to allow us to vote a referendum on the Texas session, this next session?
So the answer to that is that's not going to happen, I don't think, for a couple of reasons. I don't know what the future of America is or the future of the world is. I don't know what 50, 100 years, 150 years looks like. But so many people like yourself have served and died for this country. I want to preserve our nation. I just want to win it back. I want to win it back. Now, I will tell you, when I saw that California had a secession movement as well, I chipped in $10. I mean, I was ready to get rid of it, okay? Can you imagine? A world without California would be a day with sunshine every day. Next question. Yes, sir. Yeah. So we did not accept the Dominion voting machines. We turned them down twice. I say we have a department that does that. But I think that the software in other machines is very similar to Dominion. We passed, I don't know if it was Senate Bill 1 or 8, we passed it 4 times. I forget what the final number was. But we passed a really solid election bill this session. But there's still always going to be areas where people are going to cheat. You know, we have a law that you can't rob banks, but people do. And we have a law that you can't speed, but we do. There's always going to be somewhere looking to take advantage somewhere, and we just have to try to shut down everything we can to make cheating as close to impossible as we can make it, knowing that there is always going to be a dishonest person somewhere. Pardon?
The machines will continually allow.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we think we've done the best job that we can based on the knowledge we have and the facts that we have. Our biggest issue is mail-in voting fraud. Now we require the last 4 digits of your social or your driver's license number on the envelope, because for years we didn't know who was sending in those envelopes. So that's required starting this election. We've disconnected our machines from the internet so that they can't be hacked. However, I think I'm seeing some technology that maybe phones can hack. We just have to be vigilant. It's like the CRT issue in our schools or the pornography in our libraries, which is real. You know, we have 1,200 school districts, 9,000 campuses, 360,000 teachers. We can't watch at the Capitol everything that's happening. We have to have you as the canary in the cave to tell us when you see something so we can respond. Your great reps, your senators can follow up. And the same thing on voting issue. We have to have poll workers everywhere, poll watchers everywhere, and we have to make sure electronically that we stay one step ahead of the game. It's like cybersecurity on your phone. I mean, I have an Apple AT&T phone. You know, last week, I don't know if you have an Apple, but they sent out an alert to do a software update because AT&T, Apple, of all people, found out that someone had gotten to their system to get your information, to all of our information. So we have to be smarter than the bad guys, but the bad guys aren't going to go away. So we're just doing the best we can on that. And by the way, the first bill we're going to pass, I hope the governor makes it an emergency, because we passed a really good election bill. And I'm not blaming your House member, because he wouldn't have voted for it had he knew what the bill was. But they voted to reduce voter fraud from a felony to a misdemeanor, Class A. We're going to take it back to a felony, the first bill. They did it once. They took it out in the second session. I called the governor. I said, Governor, we got to restore this. He put it on the next special session call. We passed it again to put it back, and they took it out a second time. I try to stay out of house fights. I got enough in the Senate, but we're going to pass that, and I can just tell you, we're not going home if they kill it again. We're going to be there for a long time. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
What's being done at the state level to protect Texas citizens from overreach by the federal government? I know in the state of Missouri,
Yeah.
the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, requested to have all concealed carry permit
Yes.
get a list from the sheriff's offices, and they stood strong in that state against that. What are we doing in Texas to protect them?
Well, they're not going to get our list, I can assure you that. Number 2, we passed a really good bill last session, Senate Bill 13, I think it was. We passed a lot of bills, so I may be, no, it's not 13. But we passed a Senate bill that the Fifth Circuit Court just upheld that says social media cannot block any conservative messages, emails, or posts. And we won at the Fifth Circuit. So that's one way to protect our free speech. So that's always going to be a constant fight, and that's why we have to win now in 22 and win again in 24. I'll take one more question. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
So, what are you guys going to do to protect us from the border? Is Greg Abbott ever going to declare an invasion and shut the border down?
So I've been saying it's an invasion for a long time, for years, because it's been an invasion for a long time. Our founders never imagined that we'd have a president one day that would let our country be invaded. We normally have been spending $400 million a year on border security since I've been lieutenant governor. They were spending $200 million before I came in. I was told by DPS, Department of Public Safety, that that's what they needed, so we increased it to $400. This year we're going to spend, of your money, $4.5 billion. That's money could be used for schools or hospitals or roads. $4.5 billion to do the job the federal government's not doing. We have now, as of today, I was checking actually today, I was having a phone call on this on the bus. We have 68 miles of fencing. We have about 25 miles of concertina razor wire on the border. And then we're about 3 miles of border wall. It'll be up to 15 or 16 miles. It's very expensive. It can go up to 20 million a mile. Slowly but surely, we're going to have to do the job the federal government does. My son was U.S. attorney in Houston, and he oversaw the border. His district went from Houston all the way to Laredo to Brownsville. And he was in charge of not only law enforcement, but getting the land from all the landowners down there to build the wall. Had Trump won, we would have 200 miles of border wall today. That's about what we need in Texas, out of our 1,200-mile border. So we're doing everything we can. I'm writing the checks on the buses, so we keep sending the buses. In fact, I figured out how we secure the border. We bring the rich people from Martha's Vineyard down to the border because they got rid of every illegal to a military base in less than 24 hours. So I don't know how that happened, but we're going to keep taking it to them, constantly taking it to them. But look, we're going to have regime change. We got to have a new regime in Washington, and that's going to be in 2024. I want to pass a bill this session. Arizona had a bill that said Arizona has the right to secure their border. The Constitution says it's the federal government's position. So they passed a bill to supersede the federal government if the federal government's not doing the job. They lost in the Supreme Court in 2012. I want to pass a bill this session. I say I want to pass a bill. I want to pass a bill that will get to the Supreme Court. And that will take some really smart people to write it, like our heartbeat bill that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and we won. That was a really good bill, well written. I want to get it to this Supreme Court because I think this Supreme Court would support a bill, if it's written constitutionally sound, to say that we have a right when the federal government is putting our citizens at risk, whether it's drugs, contraband, guns, or people, criminals, terrorists. We arrested 12 terrorists last month across the board, that we have a right. And I want then a Supreme Court decision, and then we can do whatever we want. And the other thing I want to do, and I said this on Fox a couple of months ago, and I'm serious about it. It would cost us about $2 billion, but again, we're spending $4 billion now this year. I want to hire every Border Patrol agent and create a Texas Border Guard, give them a $10,000 signing bonus. They all want to come to work for us. These are heroes. They're doing their best working for someone they can't stand. I want to hire all 7,000 or 8,000 of them away, bring them over here, and Biden won't have anybody to send. And we'll just say, we'll take care of it for you, and we'll run the show. I'm serious about that. I'd like to hire every one of his border agents to a new Texas Guard force. And speaking of law enforcement, Sheriff, where are you? Sheriff, please say hi to your sheriff. He does an incredible job. And he will tell you that drugs and criminals crossing the border all the way up here is as big a problem for him as it is sheriffs close to the border. Immigrants, illegal immigrants that come through here, break into your homes, break into your cars, steal your stuff, and keep on going. So every Texas sheriff is a border sheriff. And our chief deputy is here. Is our county judge here? Where's our county judge? Is he out there? Maybe not. But anyway, we had a great dinner, learned a lot. Your DA, I'm proud to be here. Thank you for making me feel welcome. I'm very fortunate. You know, like I said, the last thing I ever thought I'd be is Lieutenant Governor of the state of Texas. I wasn't even thinking, I mean, I was in my early 50s. I hadn't run for the Senate yet. And it never occurred to me. And my senator retired from where I lived in West Houston. And so I ran for that seat, and everyone said I could win it, and we won it. And then I ran for lieutenant governor after 8 years, and everyone said I couldn't win, and we won it. And I just feel fortunate every day. So thank you. God bless you. And remember, the world depends on a strong America. America depends on a strong Texas. And we can't have a strong Texas if Beto O'Rourke and the Democrats are in charge. And remember this, we have to win in Texas because there's not another Texas to move to. Where would you go? Thank you all. God bless.